Welcome back to my channel, everyone. This is episode 2 of my new Norse Mythology series. And right off the bat, as I was researching the creation of the universe in Norse mythology, there's already so many inconsistencies, as stated in episode 1, due to the fact that there's just not enough records to properly indicate what is the one true quote-unquote canon of Norse mythology. And also due to, once again, the numerous authors that worked on the Prose Edda and the Poetic Edda. So, without further ado, episode 2. The creation of the gods, the giants, and the universe of Norse mythology. The very beginning of everything in this universe was absolutely chaotic. Nothing but dark, chaotic energies, with the only consistent thing being a giant gaping hole in the ground, called the Ginnungagap. This hole was said to be extremely, extremely deep and extremely, extremely cold. So cold that you would instantly freeze the moment you fell into it. To the north of the Ginnungagap was Niflheim, a land that was constantly shrouded in mist, forever cold, eternally cold. And this is where some of the research that I found deviates from each other. Some sources state that it's just cold and shrouded in mist and dark. Others say that this is where the source of that extreme cold is that the Ginnungagap was known for. So right off the bat, there's already inconsistencies about where this extreme cold came from, either the Ginnungagap or Niflheim. Niflheim was actually also the source of a particular well known as the Well of Wisdom, Velgamir. I'm just going to say Velgamir. It's one of 3 magical springs, and from this spring flows 11 rivers known as the Elivagar. And the Elivagar's names are Fimbulthul, Fjorm, Gjöll, Gunthra, Hrid, Leipt, Slid, Svol, Silg, Vid, and Yig. All of these rivers go several places throughout Niflheim, but every single one of these 11 rivers, the Elivagar, they all lead into the Ginnungagap. And it's here, no matter which source you go to, is here where the rivers actually start falling into the Ginnungagap and turn to ice, where they fall into the nearly endless chasm that is the Ginnungagap. And to the south of Ginnungagap was Muspelheim. It is the polar opposite of Niflheim in every single respect. It is bright, it is fiery, it is hot. In Muspelheim resides the first living entity known as Surtur. If you have seen Thor Ragnarok, you will know him as the giant flaming jackass who is destined to kill everyone and destroy Asgard. His number one role is to actually defend Muspelheim from any intruders. I'm not entirely sure why. I haven't found any records stating why this is the case, why he has to defend Muspelheim. I'm still researching all of this in great detail, and it is so fascinating seeing all these different accounts for the same stories, seeing everything just vary sometimes so drastically, and sometimes like the differences are negligible. For example, people's names, which I will be getting into later. But anyways, Surtur's number one goal in life was to defend Muspelheim from invaders, and as he preceded the universe, he has nothing to do while he's waiting for people to invade so that way he can defend Muspelheim. So while he's waiting for something to do, he spends all of his free time practicing his swordsmanship with his giant flaming sword. From his practicing his swordsmanship, flames and sparks fly off of his sword and into the Ginnungagap. It is here in the Ginnungagap that the flames from Surtur's sword and the ice blocks from the Elivagar that fell into the Ginnungagap, that's where they meet, and then when they collide, the ice turns into steam, which rises up into the air above the Ginnungagap, actually rises out of the pit, and then it cools off and turns to snow and drops right back down. And all the snow gathers at the very bottom, the very floor of the Ginnungagap. Over several millennia of this, according to Norse mythology, there's been several millennia. The ice that forms actually forms into 2 separate and distinct shapes. The first one is the very first giant outside of Surtur, and his name is Ymir. He is the predecessor for all future giants in Norse mythology. The second entity is a giant mythical cow that goes by the name of Adumbla. These two are the only living creatures, for now, living inside of the Ginnungagap, living at the base of it. And for millennia, these two would just roam around, exist, find something to do. And whenever they got hungry, they both eventually did get hungry. Ymir had the better end of the deal because he could actually drink the literal rivers of milk flowing from Adumla's udders, while Adumla had nothing to eat, so she just licked the ice blocks that formed at the bottom of the Ginnungagap. And eventually, Adumla would come to lick one particular ice block, and from this ice block, she would actually thaw out the first of the many gods. His name was Buri. Buri. B-U-R-I. Buri. He is the grandfather of the Aesir, which is the name that was given the Norse pantheon of gods. Buri's name means producer, and the reason why he's named that is because he is the grandfather of the gods. So, after millennia of drinking Adumla's milk, Ymir actually fell asleep, and during his sleep, flames and sparks from Surtur's sword somehow managed to fall all the way down to the bottom of the Ginnungagap, and right next to Ymir, which would cause him to sweat. And this is a recurring theme, sort of, in all mythologies across the world that I cannot for the life of me make sense of for why people would think that this is how the universe was created, but that's what they taught back then. That's what they believed. That was their mythology. From Ymir's sweat came a giant by the name of Thrudgelmir. He was a 6-headed giant. He was the grandfather to the frost giants. These frost giants would inevitably become the enemies of the gods of Norse mythology. But for right now, Thrudgelmir, the first giant to be born from Ymir's sweat, was hideous. He had 6 heads. He was horrifying to look at. And then from Ymir's armpit sweat were born 2 more giants, 1 male, 1 female. I have not been able to find the names for these 2 giants. I've been looking everywhere to find records of these names, of these 2 giants, but for all intents and purposes, they don't matter, and this will become apparent as the video goes on. And as more giants started sprouting into existence from Ymir's sweat, Buri had a son of his own, no mention on who the mother is, and this son was named Bor, or Bori. And after a while, once Bori was a little bit older, was able to copulate, Bori married a giantess by the name of Bestla, whose origins are also once again conflicting. She is in some cases the granddaughter of a giant named Bolthorn. Other cases, she is the daughter of Bolthorn. Neither of these 2 giants have any clear lineage as far as I have been able to uncover. And Bori and Bestla had 3 sons. Those sons were Odin, who would become the king of the Aesir, as long as his 2 brothers, Vili and Ve. They were the first of the Aesir, the canonical forces for good. Thrudgelmir and his son Bergelmir, no mention on how he was born, discovered the Aesir, and immediately they decided they want the Aesir dead. They didn't even think about it. They just saw the Aesir. They just saw Odin and his brothers and decided that they want the Aesir to be dead. There was no context for the situation. They just immediately wanted to kill them. It wasn't long after that the giants, which started multiplying rapidly from Ymir's sweat, waged war on the 3 Aesir. No mention of whether or not Buri, Bori, and Bestla actually joined in the fight, but once again, for all intents and purposes, that does not matter. So all the giants waged war on the Aesir, and this lasted, according to the text that I've read, lasted several thousands of years. And neither side could actually make any grounds this entire time, the entire time they've been fighting. The reason for it is because the Aesir were, being half god and half giant, they were extremely skilled in combat. They were extremely durable. Their wounds healed almost instantaneously. They could keep fighting for forever, it seemed. And the giants, while they were significantly weaker and they were basically cannon fodder, they were multiplying at such a rapid rate that the gods could not actually reliably kill them all. That's how quickly they multiplied. So after countless eons of them fighting, the Aesir finally decided that together they would ambush Ymir, the first giant, and they, with little effort, killed Ymir. And due to his death, the blood that flowed from his body actually flooded the Ginnungagap. It swept away and drowned all of the giants, except for 2. Bergelmir, the son of Thrudgelmir, and Bergelmir's wife, who is also unnamed. These two would eventually go far further south than Muspelheim, and they would eventually repopulate the giants. And this land that they found, they named Jotunheim, which is the land of the giants. And after the flooding had subsided, the Aesir had actually decided to create the universe using the remains of Ymir. They used his flesh to create the lands. They used his blood to create the ocean. They used his brains to create clouds in the sky. They used his hair, all of his body hair, to create the vegetation. And then they used his skull as the sky. The rest of the creation myth will have to wait until episode 3, because quite honestly, there's a lot more to the creation myth than I had thought. So this is the creation of the universe. Next episode, episode 3, will be how the gods created Midgard and other life forms to inhabit the rest of the 9 realms. So for now, that is all, and have a good night.